If members of the media have joined us, please utilize the chat feature or email media@idem.in.gov if you have any questions or would like to schedule an interview. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on IDEM's website at recycle.in.gov. With that, we will begin today's Indiana Recycling Roundtable discussion. I would like to welcome all of today's participants. I'm so glad you're here today to be part of this conversation. As we continue to host more of these discussions, your feedback is valuable. So please take a moment at the end of today's meeting to fill out the evaluation form. Link to that evaluation form will be provided in the chat box for you, and I will remind you again at the end about that evaluation. I would like to start the conversation by reminding everybody of our overall goals and go ahead and go over the agenda. I'm going to share my screen to do that. Just one moment. Okay, so today's goals are to discuss and identify issues, to brainstorm solutions, and share resources to current challenges facing recyclers in Indiana's recycling industry. The purpose is to facilitate solutions to help Indiana meet its goal of a 50% recycling rate, while helping to spur economic growth in the recycling markets. These roundtables are really just to bring all the stakeholders together, talking and kind of utilizing each other's resources and sharing those resources. This is the fourth of these roundtable, these quarterly meetings. And to keep these going, I'm trying to really reach out to you guys, and I need ideas on topics of what you guys want to see from this. In addition, I'm actually looking to kind of start forming a steering committee. So if you are interested in helping steer the direction of future meetings, please reach out to me, put your contact into the chat. I will put my email into the chat as well. And let me know if you're interested in it. These are for you. So I want you guys to help guide the direction of future meetings. So your feedback is very important. With that, today's agenda, we've already done our item and welcome. Then we will go over some education and outreach effort presentations. The first one we'll hear from is IDEM's Jennifer Hellriegel, our recycling outreach coordinator, as well as community recycling grant program coordinator. He'll go over some of IDEM's efforts. We'll move on to the Hendricks County Recycling District's Lynn Detweiler. He is the executive director and will share some of the perspective from a solid waste management district's efforts. We then go to the city of Seymour. Bernie Bryant is here with us today as their environmental educator. And lastly, we have Circular Indiana's Marla Cherney, the programs director, to share some of the interesting social media and outreach they've done recently. Then we will have time for a panel discussion and questions at the end. With that being said, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And I'm gonna let Jennifer Hellriegel start with her presentation.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, take me just a minute, let me close some screens. Okay, so Deanna, you'll be on for admitting people now. Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. We can get going. Okay, there we go. All right, so like Deanna said, my name is Jennifer Hellriegel. I am the recycling outreach coordinator, and I also do the community recycling grant program, which I'm going to talk a little bit about because it's open right now. So I want to make sure everyone knows about it. But just a little bit to talk about what ITEM does for our recycling outreach efforts. So what we'll be talking about today is we will be talking about reporting, and many of you on this call may participate in the reporting, so you'll be aware of it, but we'll share a little bit more with those that don't have to report numbers. We're going to talk a little bit about our social media. We have kits available for people to use, and also we're very happy to share any of your events on ITEM's social media as well. Then the last thing we're going to talk about is our outreach events and presentations that we do for businesses, solid waste management districts, communities, and schools. So the first part we have is our reporting. And so the reporting we have helps measure progress towards Indiana's goal to recycle at least 50% of its municipal solid waste. And I say Tom Lees, our engineer, was kind enough to share with me some of the numbers we've got from our recent reportings. And so the recycling rate was up 21%, up from last year at 19%. And our total recyclables were nearly 2 million tons, as reported from recycling activity reports, our e-waste reports, and our compost reports as well. So we use a software called Retract. It's used to measure organizations' waste and recycling programs. And data collected is compiled for our recycling activity report, which we have on our website. So if you're in for a little light reading, you can check out our activity report. Our reporting is also ITEM's solid waste and recycling data reporting program, includes reporting by landfills, transfer stations, composting facilities, recycling facilities, waste tire facilities, our waste to energy plants, processing facilities, electronic manufacturers, recyclers, and collectors. So those are all the different groups that report to us. A few more fun things that Tom shared was municipal solid waste final disposal was 6.6 million tons at Indiana landfills, and almost another 1 million tons for waste to energy and out-of-state landfills. And so we currently have 7 MRFs, or material recycling facilities, that provide nearly all in-state sorting of single-stream recyclables for end-use markets. And the total shipments from our last reports of recyclables sorted by the MRFs were 213,000 tons in 2021. And 75% of that was paper, 11% glass, 7 plastic, 4 metals, and 3 was always the fun, the other. All right, so that is a little bit about our reporting. So our social media kits, they are online. They're available for people to use. If you don't want to come up with new stuff and you want to grab what we have, that's what they're there for. So there's kits online. And here's just a little example of what we have online. And so it's called Know What to Throw. And so it talks all about not causing contamination or wish cycling. Other things we have in there is if you want to talk about empty, clean, and dry, or also things to know that you shouldn't put in your recyclables. So we have kind of a yes and a no as to what should be recycled around the state in general. So each area will have very specific messages. These are more of a general for around the state. And then the other place where we focus is on outreach events and presentations. So outreach events are big ones that we do. We do the state fair every year, Earth Day Indiana. We have a state house market that we participate in. And so for our outreach events, they're very much about just kind of quick interactions with people. So at the state fair, I always like to say that it's not to teach them a big message. It's just for them to have fun and take a little something away with them. And then we will also do bigger presentations where they might be 30, 40, 60 minutes long for businesses, communities, and schools. So I'm just going to share a couple pictures. So here was the state fair this past year. We had a prize wheel. People love prize wheels. And so what it was is they'd spin the prize wheel and they would land on an item that would normally go to a landfill that could be recycled. And we talked about how long it would take to decompose in a landfill. So they kind of got the idea of how long things really sit in a landfill versus being recycled. And then they'd win a prize. And some of our school presentations that we offer are landfills, and then a lot on recycling, obviously. So we cover compost, vermicompost, and electronics as well. So during Earth Day, pre-COVID, about 60% of our presentations were on recycling. I say during COVID, we did virtual ones, and it was very much set up as to specific topics. So it wasn't so much 60% of it was recycling. It was just a lot of people would join the recycling ones. So that is the kind of the short of what our outreach and education is. We're here for technical support. The other thing I wanted to share before I left was our community recycling grant program is currently open and accepting applications. And so what they are is the program is available to applicants. You can request anywhere from $1,000 to $100,000, and there is a 25% cash match. And the main parts of the eligibility is that you're starting or expanding a program, that you're offering a new service, collecting a new material, or serving a new area through establishment of a new permanent service. It's also to improve efficiency and sustainability over current program practices. And our applications are being accepted through October 6th. Let me check to see if I did not put on there. So it is open to solid waste management districts, cities, towns, nonprofits, schools, and universities. So the only thing we're not open to are businesses. Deanna has a grant that is available for businesses. So that is a very quick run through. I know we've got a lot of presenters. Here is my information. I will obviously be around. If you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. If you have any questions about the community recycling grant programs, please email crgp@item.in.gov. We will accept applications through the 6th. And if you have any questions up to then, please let me know. All right. Thank you. I'm going to turn you back over to Deanna. That was a quick run through of item.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah. Oh, let me stop sharing.
And just another note about items, education outreach programming. We have the challenge of trying to educate on recycling throughout the entire state. And so we really rely on solid waste management districts. They do a fabulous job of educating of what is available within their counties. And most of the time, if we get questions here, we're going to be going to the solid waste management districts anyways, because they know what is locally available. We got the challenge of trying to do, as Jennifer said in the social media, the broad overview of what we know is generally recyclable throughout the entire state. My dream and goal would be to try to work with the MRFs to get a universal recyclable acceptable list for the majority of Indiana. I think it would be hard, but within the MRF sheds. So I'm still working towards that. It's out there. So with that, talking about those solid waste management districts, I'm going to invite Lynn Detweiler, our next speaker, to talk about Hendricks County's recycling district efforts on recycling. Lynn, you should be able to share your own screen.
All right, did that work?
It did.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Again, my name is Len Detweiler. I'm with Hendricks County Recycling District. I've been here about 17 years, and we've gone through some changes. Most recently in 2020, we changed our name from Hendricks County Solid Waste Management District to Hendricks County Recycling District. It was actually a change I kind of fought for a long time because it still doesn't capture everything we do. Obviously, we promote waste reduction, reuse as well as recycling, but the truth of the matter is it gets our residents closer to what we do than solid waste management district. Those words mean. So we took the plunge and think it was a good move. So a couple things kind of about what I'm going to hit on today. I'm going to focus on our efforts for really adult outreach that we do here. We have a pretty robust youth education program in Hendricks County as well, but today I'm going to focus on more of our adult outreach. And our overarching goal with the outreach that we do to our residents is we kind of want them to think of us whenever they have a question about recycling or waste reduction in our community. So and I don't know that we're necessarily doing anything that's too unique or too special. I'm sure it's a lot of the same things that many of you are doing. We could certainly do more, but we're all limited by time and money. So my hope is that maybe everybody can kind of take away a nugget or two and go from there. All right, good. So my next slide here, we're going to kind of hit on really the two arenas where we spend the majority of our outreach and effort and education efforts, and that is in digital and print. And of those two, frankly, most of it's digital at this point. Again, there's no special sauce in what we're doing. It's probably pretty typical of what a lot of you are doing, and we'll kind of walk through each of these individually. But we also do a handful of in-person events every year, and kind of like Jennifer said, they're good opportunities to have some quick one-on-one interactions with folks, but we don't do a lot of them. We'll do the 4-H fair, we'll do Night Out Against Crime, which is big in our community for a number of the police forces. But so first, I'll hit on our website. This is really kind of the cornerstone of our outreach efforts. A lot of what we do is trying to drive people to our website for the answers that they're seeking. So yeah, it's available 24/7 when nobody's in the office. It's still there, available to answer questions. It can be updated as information changes, as rules change. You can go in there and obviously make those changes. And at this point, thankfully, most of our residents are tax savvy enough that if the information's out there, they can probably find it. Obviously, it's on us to be sure that the information is there and accurate. Couple notes about websites. You might need to spend a little money to get it to look the way that you want it to look, and to function how you want it to function. And one note about that is when we overhauled our website a couple of years ago, we were changing our name, so we needed to change our web address as well. So our website is now recyclehendrickscounty.org. But we also at that point purchased recyclehc.org as another domain that is usable, is helpful sometimes too, to have the abbreviated option. So again, when you're looking at your website, you need to ask yourself, what are people looking for when they come visit your site, and how easy is it for them to find that when they get there. And then over 50% of all web traffic now is on phones and tablets. So ensuring that your website functions well and appears well, if somebody's looking you up on their smartphone or on their iPad, is important too. One other nugget here that we implemented when we did this website overhaul. Nobody likes pop-ups. I get it. I hate them. But they work. And when we did this website for visitors that first come to us, they will get a pop-up that asks if they want to subscribe to our email newsletter. I'm sure that 80% of folks, 90% of folks probably click off of that, but I will say that we get a handful of email newsletter subscriptions every week, and I'm pretty sure that most of those are coming from that pop-up. So something to consider. Again, nobody likes them, but we interact with them because they must work. So I'll move on to that email newsletter I just spoke about. We send out our email newsletter twice a month. It's nothing that we do weekly. And we try to keep it pretty succinct. A couple of tips: if you are considering an email newsletter, it is best to use an email marketing service. This is going to help you legitimize what you're doing. Those services, you're familiar with them: MailChimp, HubSpot, Constant Contact. Those kinds of companies are out there. They help you to manage your subscriber list, and probably one of the most important things is helping you comply with the email marketing laws that are in place. So to give you kind of an idea, we have about 2,200 subscribers to our email newsletter, and it costs us about $34 a month for the service. We use MailChimp. I think that rate would tick up once we hit 2,500 subscribers. So that works out to about $400 a year. If you compare that to what it might cost to run an ad or two in the local newspaper, it's probably money well spent. So a couple of other tips here: don't overdo it. People get inundated with email newsletters. We try to keep them pretty brief, very graphic based, with a lot of announcements, event reminders. We always include links back to our website when it's appropriate. And again, it kind of just helps build the brand and stay relevant to those folks in your community. So can't do outreach without social media these days. We don't do a ton. There's probably room for improvement here, and we keep it pretty simple to Facebook and Nextdoor. I frankly am not very familiar with Instagram or anything else. I kind of use what I'm familiar with. Again, I'm sure there's room for improvement here, and we really use these more to reinforce and remind folks of who we are and what we're about. Again, lots of graphics and links pointed back to the website. Our email newsletter, one of the features that MailChimp gives us is the option to post a link to every email newsletter on our Facebook feed. So that shows up every time the email newsletter is distributed. It also gets posted automatically to our Facebook, so that's helpful. I'd encourage everybody to be sure that your contact information on your social media profiles is correct, especially your website, and use your logo someplace on your profile. Again, it helps to kind of connect the dots for people about who you are and what you're about. One thing I'll mention is Facebook groups. Every community has, a bunch of chatter groups, and this is one where again, I kind of steered away from it for a while, but especially when promoting like our Talks Away days that we do 5 times a year, I will go ahead and hop in. I've got a list of about a dozen Facebook groups that are active in Hendricks County, different town chatters and that kind of thing. And I go in and I share that information in each of those. It's an effective way to get the word out. And frankly, most of the shares and comments that we have on our Facebook content comes from stuff that I've shared in those Facebook groups. One of the downsides is that you can't share, or if you can, I don't know how, I'll just say that. The district, I can't go in and share directly as the recycling district. So I have to use my personal profile to do that. Some folks are more comfortable doing that than others. I get that. But again, the most traction that we have had with Facebook specifically has been in sharing in those Facebook groups. If you're going to be active on social media, be sure that your notifications are set so that if somebody comments on something you posted, you're aware of it. I will say you don't always necessarily have to engage in what's going on. Sometimes others will answer the questions that are asked, and we're all social media savvy enough to know that things can get sideways on Facebook. So take all of that with a grain of salt. But I will say in the last 12 and 18 months, I've shared more than we have in the past, and really haven't had a lot of things get sideways. So I think that's encouraging. One thing that we have only done a little bit is Facebook ads. That was a few years ago. I'm considering doing some more of that this next year. So helps you kind of target your audience that way. All right, moving on, the Google business profile. So I don't maybe everybody knows about this, but this was, I think this has been very beneficial for us. So if you're not familiar, if you hop on your smartphone and search for your organization, Google will populate this, something that'll look like this. This is a screenshot from my phone when I popped our name in. So if you're not aware, you can take steps to essentially own this business and verify that you are in control of this organization. And once you have done that, then you are able to control the information that folks see. So if you're like me, if I Google something, this information is what I tend to look at first. But if, and I look at it for organizations and assume the information is correct, but it isn't always, obviously. So, and again, this is information people see often. So if this is something that you haven't done, I would encourage you to do it. It's free. There is a verification process that you have to step through to verify that you are who you say you are. You can do this for multiple locations as well. So we've got a couple of yard waste recycling centers, one in Plainfield and one in Brownsburg. And so we have done this for each of those as well. That proved to be a little tricky because one of the ways that you verify you are who you say you are is through a postcard that shows up in the mail. Well, we don't receive mail at either of those yard waste recycling centers. So that was a little tricky, and frankly, I don't even remember how we ended up cracking that nut, but we got it done and have verified all 3 locations for us. So if that's not anything you've done, again, I recommend you making the effort to do that. I'll hit briefly on our print efforts. We don't do much. As you know, it's expensive. The information dates very quickly. But the recycling guide, there's a picture of it here, is something that we've done for a number of years. It's got the nuts and bolts of what we do, our program information, a little frequently asked questions section, and then an A to Z recycling guide. So if somebody in Brownsburg, here in Hendricks County, decides that they have a car battery that they want to recycle, they can look it up in the A to Z guide here and find out places around Hendricks County that they could take their auto battery to have it recycled. So again, really good information. A lot of folks like that tactile thing that they can have and throw in the junk drawer or whatever and refer to down the road. It's a great handout to have at events, but again, it's the info dates very quickly and obviously can't be changed once it's printed, and it is expensive to produce, and then production is just one piece of it. You also have to get it in people's hands. So we're considering maybe not re-upping this for the next go round. It's due here in the next year or so, and we've got a decision to make about doing it. So we also do some, again, newspaper magazine ads locally here. We've got a calendar that goes out to about 40,000 households in Hendricks County that we spend some money getting our Tox Away Day information in. Again, it's a way to maybe get it in front of some people that don't normally see our digital outreach, but it costs a fair amount of money. One thing that we hit on long ago, and I'll hold it up here, are sticky notes. This is just a pad of sticky notes, and you can get them printed with whatever you want on them. Again, when it comes to Tox Away Days, this is a great thing to be able to hand out to people that are coming through our Tox Away Day line. Hey, here are next year's dates or the other Tox Away events for this year. They can stick it on the toolbox, they can stick it on the refrigerator, they can stick it on the calendar, and it's not terribly expensive. So when it comes to print, we still do some, but we also are moving away from some of it. So One last one here to kind of a bonus one to throw in here. And this is one that we haven't been able to do for a few years because COVID ruined everything. But there was a time for about 3 years where we did facility tours. And it's probably maybe the best outreach work we've done. And essentially what we would do is charter a motor coach and have everybody meet at the fairgrounds at 9 o'clock on whatever day. And then we'd go tour Twin Bridges landfill here in Danville, Electronics Recyclers International down in Plainfield, and then raise a material recovery facility, or MRF, on the west side of Indianapolis. Obviously, we've got all of those pretty close to where we're located, so that's helpful. But anybody that has done much education on waste management or recycling understands all the misconceptions that folks have about, all of my recycling gets thrown away, or the landfill is just a huge heap of trash. It's very helpful for people to see firsthand what is actually happening at those places. Across the 3 years, we had about 75 attendees, so it's not a lot of people necessarily, but those 75 folks walked away with a new and different understanding of what really happens at a facility like ERI or Twin Bridges. So again, it's robust, deeper level education, and the feedback from the attendees has been excellent, but it's also great feedback, and the facility representatives really appreciated it too. So it takes a lot of coordination to get the motor coach and lunch and the facilities all lined up, and it's a full day. We would go from about 9 to 4, and we're worn out by the end of it. But one other thing I'll throw in, a lot of our recycling district board members and citizens advisory committee members also attended. So, and we had some town managers and other people just from around, local leaders that took advantage of it. And I think it was beneficial for all of them as well. So obviously you probably can't recreate exactly this where you are, but there may be something that you can do that would be beneficial. All right, so wrapping up here, some words of advice when it comes to outreach and education. I build a brand kit. So you can see our logo in the lower portion of the screen there. I would encourage you you may need to spend a little time, spend some money with a professional to develop a brand that really conveys what you're about, and then don't be afraid to use it. And that can be part of the process of developing it with a professional, as they can help you maximize the ways and be sure that it's going to be usable for digital and usable for print and things like that. And then be consistent. If you choose a logo, colors, and some fonts that is going to be your brand, quote unquote, then use those consistently so that folks can connect the consistent visual with your organization. And yeah, be committed. This stuff takes time and effort and money to do and to do well. So, and we all have different levels of that. I understand that. But if you want to do it and do it well, it's going to take some of all of those. Be diverse. Again, there's no silver bullet. And you're gonna need to spread your efforts a little bit. So again, we don't do a lot of print, but we do some print. It can't all just be your website or all be Facebook. Probably need to spread it out a little bit. Be consistent. So one of the things that I think about this is with like program names. You may call program a different thing, or you have a shortened name for it in the office when you're talking about it. But when you're putting it out for the public to see and consume, try to use a consistent name, full name, so people can connect that with what you are. Again, photos, graphics, repeated messaging, timing of outreach, be consistent in what you're doing. And then maybe the best thing here is be thoughtful, responsive, and helpful. So the way we have tried to position ourselves in Hendricks County is we hope that people will contact us or interact with us in some way if they have a question about how to recycle or dispose of something in Hendricks County. If we're going to ask them to do that, then we need to make that information accessible. We need to answer the phone when it rings, return voicemails, reply to emails, those kinds of things. So you got to do the follow through piece too. So I think that about wraps it up for me. There's my contact information, and I will stick around.
Thanks, Lynn. That was actually a great presentation. I actually, you said that you were just doing what everybody else is doing, but I definitely got some tidbits out of it myself. I jotted down a bunch of notes, and I have a few questions that we may get to the end if other people don't have questions. But I liked things I took out of Facebook. Don't always have to engage. I think that's important for all of us to remember, because we don't want to look like we're just getting into a two-way conversation. The Google business profile, that always is prominent when I'm doing a Google search, and I think a lot of people don't know they can take ownership of it. So I thought that was a great tidbit, and I love the sticky notes. I really like the idea of being able to take something home where I can just stick it on my fridge or somewhere with those dates. There was other things too, but I appreciate you talking today, Lynn, and we're going to keep the conversation moving, and we're going to move from a county level perspective to the city level perspective. I've invited Bernie on to talk from the city of Seymour, and she is their environmental educator. You don't hear too many cities that have their own environmental educators, so I'm already impressed with the efforts they have to hire one of those, and I'll just hand the floor over to you, Bernie.
Okay, well, thank you, Deanna. I think I have thought more about our education program in the last week since I got your invitation than I have in all the years I've been here, because it's something that we just do and we don't really have to explain it. So this has been a good exercise for me to have to do that. So let's see if I can share the screen. No, I can't get rid of that side. Did I?
Not yet.
It's not, was it?
Function F5, I feel.
There we go.
Yep.
Well, I am going to start, I think, with my favorite, because I've been examining this and I've realized that we have about 4 groups that we actually focus our attention on when we try to educate. And I've lost my, oh, there it is. Student education is probably my favorite, because those are my favorite days when I get to spend the day in the classroom. We have schools that will invite us to come every year and share with them. And some of the teachers have their favorite programs that they want us to review with them. When we visit students, most of our conversation is about landfills, reducing waste, natural resources, and why it is so important to recycle. And we do a hands-on review of what is acceptable in our area. And for that, I usually take in typical household items that they might find at their homes. And then we discuss those. We discuss what they are. This is a tub, this is a cup, that kind of thing. And then we ask ourselves, do we need to throw this away? Can this be reused in a way? Do we need to donate it somewhere? Or can it be recycled? Does it need to go to the landfill? And if we find ourselves throwing away a lot of things, we ask, can we make better choices when we're at the store, when we're shopping? Do we need to buy so many disposable things? So that's what we look at with the students. And then we always send home a flyer, which is just a list of what we accept. And that way they can share that with their families. Now we realize those flyers don't always make it home. So we do have a couple of methods that we use to reach our adult residents in Seymour. We've not had a lot of success. I talked to other educators and they have programs at their local library or special presentations, and we have not been very successful with that. But what we have found to be our best tools are social media, like Lynn already said, and something that we call the green tag program. And with the social media, we are usually addressing questions that we receive either by phone or through email, because we think if one person is asking that, there are probably more people that are confused about the same issue. So we try to address those. We use a lot of photos in our social media post. We also bring up issues that we see happening on the curbside. So if we see a lot of people setting out boxes with the plastic wrap and styrofoam still in them, we may do a post and just remind them, you know, your boxes need to be empty and flattened to be recycled. So we just kind of focus on what we see happening in the community. We use videos. Sometimes we like to make our own, because we found if we use our employees, then their friends and family will see that and they're more likely to engage with that on social media. So we do that. And I sometimes feel like we are repeating ourselves a lot. I think Lynn mentioned that as well. But it seems like there's always someone that it's their first, you know, they're just joining us. They just started following us. And so they are interested and they will comment, and that will start a conversation and a discussion. And sometimes we notice people will mention their friends in the comments. And that's always good, because peers usually have more influence on people than our department can have. So we like that, or if they share it, that's always helpful as well. The second tool that we use is this green tag that you can see in the photo. And one side has a list of the common errors that people can make when they try to recycle. Do not bag is a big one. People want to bag their materials, no electronics, things like that. And we can just mark whatever the infraction is, we like to call it. And that way it explains to them why we did not empty their toter, why we left it behind. The flip side of the tag explains what we do recycle. So those are the acceptable items, so they know exactly what should be in their container. And the way we gauge that is the driver just sends a list into the office of the containers that he left behind and tells us why he left them. And then we put a ticket in for that, and someone can go out and tag that. Now, I have found that these tags can bring some great conversations, because sometimes the people will see you if they're home, and they will come out and start a conversation, want to know what's going on. And then if not, there is a number included on the tag, and they will call that. Now, sometimes they call, they're not necessarily happy when they first call, but that gives us an opportunity to explain why we left it behind, what's wrong with it, and what they need to do to change that. So that tag is directed to that household that is struggling to recycle the correct things. And it's kind of a personal, it's a little more personal than the blanket post that we would do on Facebook that just covers everything. So that way, once we establish that contact with that person, then they may have other questions that we can answer. They may have other things they're confused about. So I will say, if a toter receives 3 tags, we will remove it, because Seymour offers recycling as a free service. So we want to try to work with our residents to help them recycle the correct way. But we also want to keep our materials clean and usable. So if we sometimes have a household that doesn't take responsibility for what's in their container and they don't correct the issues, then we end up just pulling it and they no longer participate in our recycling program. So the third area that we focus our education on is our drop-off area. We have an area where people can bring their household hazardous waste, their recycling, and their yard waste. And mostly in that area, we use signage. We just have little blurbs that say, please remove the styrofoam, or please take your bags back with you, because people like to carry their items in for recycling in bags. And so we ask them to take them back because we don't recycle those. And then we also have an attendant on duty whenever our drop-off is open. And I have found that that is a very good point, because there's that one-to-one, again, that he can answer their questions, he can explain why they can't recycle something because it looks like something else and they don't understand. And he's there to help them through that. And then the last point that we focus on is pretty much what everyone has, community events, whether it's a Kids Fest. We have the big Oktoberfest coming up later this week. So any kind of social events like that, that you can set up a booth and take some information with you and just be there for that one-to-one where you can explain and clear up any misconceptions that people may have about recycling and the whole recycling process in our area. So that is, and I don't think I have my contact information on here. I apologize for that. So that is the way that we educate here in Seymour.
Thanks, Bernie. Yeah, that was a very good presentation as well. I think you guys have a lot of good efforts. I think if we have time, I'd be curious to see and talk to Lynn and you and see how your drop-off sites compare. I think that Hendricks County has some drop-offs as well. So clear and useful signage at those is always, I know, valuable. And being able to have an attendant, I know that's like a topic of solid waste districts across the entire state. If you can have an attendant, obviously it does help a lot. You're exactly on point with that. And a lot of, I think what a lot of people who are in the business of educating about recycling struggles with, I think with a lot of these tips, is finding those times and resources, whether it be money, whether it be staff, whether it's just the time in the day to also sit down on your social media and respond to people. So it's good to see that there's solutions out there and that people are finding ways to find those resources and make them happen. So our last presenter, before we get into a lot of questions, is going to be Marla Attorney with Circular Indiana. She's their programs manager. And I think that Circular Indiana, I'm kind of glad that we are rounding it out with this, because what they've been doing incorporates a lot of that social media that you guys said that you've been using as a valuable tool. And I think that talking about branding and on point with, maybe Marla will hit on this as well, but they just rebranded their entire organization. Formerly it was the Indiana Recycling Coalition. And they've done some really great branding work to really have a nice image around their logo and everything else. So Marla, I will hand it over to you.
Sure. So just to give a little bit of background, Circular Indiana is working to strengthen the circular economy in Indiana. And the primary ways that we do that are through education and advocacy. So I'm going to focus today on our education component. But our audience is, we're going to go back in the opposite direction. We've been kind of getting smaller. Our audience is very broad. It's statewide. And we hit on a lot of different municipalities, a lot of different counties. And so we're constantly kind of dealing with that push and pull of different things that are, you know, what's acceptable in certain recycling bins in one county as opposed to a different county or a different city. So because of our statewide audience, we've really kind of made this shift to digital programming for education as opposed to in-person or mailers, simply because it's kind of an easier way for us to reach out to somebody that's in, you know, the northern part of the state or the southern part of the state, and not just kind of in our own backyards. But where I'm going to start today is, rather than jumping right into our education, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you where our starting point was. And I think it's a little bit, sometimes it's overlooked. Let's see if I can pull this up. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to start with the research component that we did before we started this. A lot of times I think the tendency is to just jump straight into education without taking a step back to think about who your audience is, what their preferred learning methods are, and kind of what are the information that they want. Since we don't collect recyclables, we're not kind of limited in you know, what exactly we take. So we try to listen to our partners, but we also wanted to see what were the sorts of information that's going to be valuable to our audience. So we started out with this kind of very brief survey, and I know it's kind of small, so you don't have to read it, but I'm just going to point out that we kind of focused on what are the topics that people want to learn about. So, you know, people wanted to know a lot about information on the circular economy, lots about advocacy and policy. A significant number of folks wanted to know what they could do to change their behavior. So not only how to recycle right, but how to reduce their waste and other aspects. And then the other kind of critical component is our what is your favorite way to learn question. So through that, we learned that while a few people do want to learn on social media, the largest percentage of our audience actually enjoys reading it in like blog form or article form. So we really took that to heart. So then when we started designing this education program, we really wanted to look at 4 different goals. The first one was to expand our audience. So it wasn't just kind of the same individuals. We wanted to also engage with our audience. We didn't want to just be throwing information at them. We wanted to give them the chance to kind of go back and forth with us. We wanted to incorporate the questions that we get. I know that's been mentioned a few times before, is incorporating questions that we get over phone or email, because lots of the same people have the same questions. And then we also wanted to focus on the practical ways that at the individual level, someone can make a difference. I think there's a lot of disenfranchisement around recycling in general. And so we wanted to give how one person at an individual level, even if it's a small effort, how they can make a difference. And then finally, we wanted to kind of broaden the message, not just what is recyclable, why do we recycle? What's the benefits of recycling, not just environmental, but economic as well. And then the same message as well for reducing and reusing. Why do we do these things? So we chose a number of different methods. I'm going to start with our Instagram page. Now, these posts are on Instagram, Facebook, some of them are on Twitter and LinkedIn. So we have kind of an expansive process, but I think Instagram is probably the easiest to scroll through. So we had a number of different types of posts that we did, and we did this on a schedule so that people knew what would be posted when. So if they were more interested in one subject over another, they could come back on that day and look at that post, and maybe they didn't care as much about the rest of them. So we had 5 main components. The first day we posted this on Mondays were our product options. This was just to show folks what's out there that maybe is more recyclable, maybe it's better for the environment in some way, whatever that is. Here's something that you can go out and buy. Not that we're encouraging you to necessarily go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff, but if you're looking to make sustainable swaps in your life, here's some examples of that. On Tuesdays, we would post news articles. Sometimes this was about Circular Indiana. Sometimes it was about our partners. We also would post about our blogs. So I will get to our blogs in a little bit for people that were interested in that. On Wednesdays, we would post information about facts. And so these were just some facts for impact that showed a little bit about, the impact of making good choices, perhaps some of the challenges that we're facing, to just give folks something number-wise to crunch on a little bit for people that are maybe more motivated by facts and figures as opposed to just do this thing to make a change in your life. Thursdays, we highlight preferably an Indiana organization or company. So this one, for example, was some vertical farming companies in Indiana. And the goal is to show that there are people in the circular economy working every day within Indiana and then regionally as well, to show that this is happening right here in our state. This isn't something that just happens far away. It's actually occurring every day in Indiana. And then finally, we would do facts, or we do facts like tips for change, I guess is what we kind of call them, on Fridays. And so that's just kind of ways to present different sorts of information about how to make sustainable swaps in your life. So I'll just go through this one. This one we did was bar soap, and they're recognizing that there is no one magical product that's going to automatically reduce waste all the time, but thinking about some of those trade-offs. So like when we talk about with soaps, doing what you can to be organic, or prioritizing bar soap, which has less packaging than gel soaps, recognizing that not everything is perfect. Like in this case, we mentioned that bar soap is probably not the best option for a public restroom because that's a little gross. So anyway, so we did all these things. We've been keeping track of our metrics to see what's worked well, what hasn't, so that we can lean into the things that get people really excited, the things that end up with engagement pieces. So on this one's fairly recent. We're always looking to see what brands and what things people are doing in their personal life. So we really try to ask a question like, which soap do you recommend? What do you like, right? Nobody wants to go out and buy a soap that somebody doesn't like. But what things do you do that are more sustainable that you would recommend? And so getting that little bit of an engagement piece. And then I know I'm kind of running out of time a little bit here, so I'll just go quickly to our blogs. So a number of our viewers really wanted to dig a little deeper. So the social media posts are great, but they're short, right? They're just one fact or a couple of ideas. Our blogs are a way for us to get much more in depth into how to recycle properly. What does the recycling process look at? And it was also a way for us to do infographics that also could be shared or printed or whatever we want to do. So here's some things that, we always want you to recycle. What are the things that are generally not recyclable? And what are the things that you need to check in your local area to respond to those? So our blogs have really exploded, our digital communications. They're extremely popular. People tend to not just read one blog, but they'll read a bunch of blogs. So we've got them grouped by subject. So right now we've done paper, glass, and organics with metals and beyond coming up. But so this is just a way for us to get a little bit more in depth on, okay, well, what things are recyclable? Why are they recyclable? Why aren't they recyclable? To answer some of those more detailed questions. That way it's all just right there at folks' fingertips, and they can just look at it and find what they need to know, or they can reach out to us on one of our social media pages as well. So far, we think it's been really successful. We're seeing good growth on both social media and in our website traffic. So, this is the start of a lengthy campaign, but we're hoping that it will continue to make the sort of impact that we've been seeing so far. So I think I will wrap it up with that. I can put my email address in the chat, just in case anyone wants to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions via email as well.
Thank you, Marla. And as you guys could see on the even like the examples of the blog posts and other things, you all see the same coloring scheme, the same branding of that Circular Indiana. I think I heard, Marla, that you guys purposely chose, a lot of people associate recycling with green, but you purposely chose other colors. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And also making sure that we chose bright colors that were fun. What that does is it helps us stand out a little bit, but it also helps us kind of tap into those other motivations that people might have, which is why we focused a lot on the economic portion of things, because I suspect, just based on the conversations I've had within the state of Indiana, that a lot of people aren't aware of the business side of recycling and how critical that is, right, for recycling, right? We can't recycle if there aren't businesses interested in using that material, but just the benefits of that and that it's happening in Indiana. So really highlighting those messages, and in our blogs, that's where we kind of lean into that. We do our best to feature Indiana companies to tell people exactly where that cardboard box is going, who is processing it, who's making it into a new cardboard box, and giving a place to a name. So it's not some nebulous thing, you put it in your bin and it disappears. No, it's staying here in Indiana and it's turning into something new.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely, as an organization, as IDEM, as another statewide education effort, we appreciate your efforts, so we can just kind of share and don't have to do some of that work ourselves.
We love sharing. Sharing is great.
If I can have all the presenters kind of turn on their video, I did prepare a few additional questions for the panelists that you can kind of chime in on. You may or may not have additional information, but I thought I'd just kind of guide the conversation. So we all are providing education. What our influence, or trying to influence behavior change in our communities, right? So are there particular components of your program that you feel have worked better than others to produce behavior change results? I think Bernie, yours is probably a good example, using the cart tagging.
Yes.
Maybe you can speak on you think of how successful that might be or not, and maybe anybody else if they want to chime in, but we'll start with you, Bernie.
Yes, that has definitely been a very positive point for us because people, like I said, it just meets them where they are. It comes directly to them and it's specific to what they have put in their container that is wrong. And it gives us the chance to explain, no, we're not just being picky, but if everyone puts that diaper in there, then we have a lot of diapers by the end of the day, and it's important that the material is clean and able to be used. So that's been a very good tool for us.
You joke about the diapers, but I've seen it over and over.
Yes.
And I don't understand why people think that you can recycle your diaper. Are you losing, you said that after 3 hits that the cart is pulled. Did you see that really impact your program at all? Or is that pretty rare for you to have to pull a cart?
It doesn't, because most of the time, the people who don't correct the problem, we're not putting that much quality material in there to begin with. But it's funny because when we post things or when people drive down the street and they see that bright green tag on there, and then if I run into them somewhere, they'll say, well, I told my husband or I told my wife, or, we don't want to get the green tag. So it's like, it's a stigma. They don't want to come home and get the nasty gram on their containers. So it's kind of funny that they watch
some
for
peer
that.
pressure involved with the tags too,
Yes.
isn't there? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's a great example. Is there anything else you guys think of offhand?
Yeah, I'll speak to one of the things that we've tried to focus on is recognizing that convenience is a really big portion of how people make decisions. And so trying to, that's one of the reasons that we've given some of those product options, is recognizing that folks, they want to know what they can just go to the store and pick up. In addition to all of the, not everybody can reduce all of their waste all the time. So we've taken a much broader approach, which is, it's not that you need to never, buy anything that's ever in plastic ever, but think about the sort of things that you are buying. Can you make a choice that's, buying, for example, with a yogurt container, buy a bigger one. So you've got it all and you can just eat out of that instead of buying a whole bunch of little small ones, and giving them options for what fits with their lifestyle. Because that kind of one size fits all approach is not going to work for most people. I mean, we all have our preferences. We all have busy, hectic lives. So doing whatever we can to break it down for them and make it as simple as possible to know what are the things that they can take a step today, and not just, how do I change my whole life to never have waste again, but what's the meaningful step that I can take to make a difference today, without having to, be the person that never buys anything that's not in bulk ever again. So
I know that I attend a lot of the Recycling Partnership. If anybody on this call is not familiar with the Recycling Partnership, they're a national organization that also has a lot of educational tools on their website. They'll provide templates for social media, for tags, the cart tagging, a lot of other things free of charge. But they always say that mailers, it's interesting to me because I've heard other people be like, that's a lot of money to do mailers to everybody's household and we don't see the return. But their research shows that those are effective. Have any of, I guess this is really more for Bernie or Lynn, have you tried the mailers, and have you seen any positive results from mailers?
We haven't done mailers per se. With the recycling guide that I talked about, this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We would, every time we would do a new iteration, we would pay it to have it inserted in a newspaper that goes to every household in Hendricks County. So, and that has proven to be an effective way to get it in a lot of hands. Now I'm sure that there are those folks that hopefully are, if they're not going to read it, are throwing it in the recycling bin, paper and all, newspaper and all. But it's a good way to get it in front of a lot of folks relatively easily, not necessarily inexpensively.
Just a side note on that, how often do you update the A to Z mailer? That was one of my questions. Or because you said you were looking at updating it. So
yeah, I would like to say we do it every 2 years. That usually drags into every 3.5 years by the time we carve out space to do it, because it's a pretty heavy lift. We're a pretty small operation. There's two of us that are full-time, one part-time in the office. And it takes a lot of work to confirm all the information with all of the local organizations and then lay
Right,
it out and get it designed. But
definitely. And before I move on to my next question, I saw there was one in the chat for Bernie as well. Does every home get a recycling toter in Seymour?
They do not. When we started the process, we handed out to, what we had at that point. And now then it's a request thing. So if you call in and you request one, and then we're able to put the flyer on the top that tells you what you have. But we already had we've had a lot of residents added since we started our program back in 2014, I think. So there are a lot of houses that do not have it. Some of them don't want it. They don't like, it ruins the aesthetics of their home, and they don't want that large container. It's too big. They don't want to have to drag it to the street. So there are some that just choose not to recycle. So they do not.
Okay, my next question, excuse me, is what do you see to be the most beneficial results of conducting education and outreach in your community? So kind of what your goals are, or what you see as a benefit in your communities, such as just increased tonnage of recyclables. IDEM loves to see that because we have a 50% recycling goal in our state. Greater participation of recycling just by per resident, reduced contamination. Does, hosting all-in-one collection events, does that help create overall community building? Just any thoughts on that?
sure, I mean, all of those things are right, are what we're after. We've tried to help folks understand the importance of recycling right. I think a lot of organizations like ours have pivoted to that in recent years, and rightfully so. So, we've had this debate for years. Is our tonnages the best way to measure the effectiveness of your recycling program? Probably not, but that's what we've got, right? So, yeah, contamination. And Deanna, you mentioned recycling drop-off centers. We've got 3 here in Hendricks County. We used to have 4. One went away because of abuse. We're spending a fair amount of time and money right now designing a new recycling center for our most these are the recycling centers are in our more rural areas, and the town that gets the most use. We've just fought for years with contamination and abuse and overstuffing of bins and stuff on the ground, and so we are moving to an attended site. But it takes a lot of time and money and effort to do that and do it right. We're getting a little help from IDEM with the community recycling grant program. So thanks, Jennifer. But yeah, I mean, just behavior change is difficult. So sometimes the most successful stories are the folks that call and just ask the question straight out, what can I do with this? And then you give them a handful of options.
I liked Bernie's example too of social media, making your own videos of the local, with locals that start in it, because I think you're right, that kind of word of mouth also is a great way to kind of reach the community, build community, make behavior change. So what external resources that have not been mentioned have you found most useful for education and outreach? Such as social media kits like IDEM has, or that the Recycling Partnership offers. Maybe there's signage templates you can find somewhere. There's toolkits I know available through EPA, through other organizations, national organizations, trainings, National Recycling Coalition, others offer trainings. What do you guys, are there any that you'd like to recommend to others that you use, or maybe you go local and you just want to use your someone local to help create your brand and other outreach efforts? No thoughts on that one?
I'll jump in and say,
Sure.
when it comes to like the recycling guide that we've done, our website and some of those efforts, we use a local firm here that helps to help us with that, kind of the development of getting a particular look and developing the logo and things like that. The other thing that we have used for a number of years, that has been very beneficial, and that's Canva. If you're not familiar with Canva, when it comes to developing graphics to share in newsletters, social media, I mean, it's a great resource to help old guys that aren't very good at graphics to be able to, it makes it easier.
Canva is a great tool. It makes everybody look like a professional, I think. So, and they'll even, you just choose your platform, your social media platform even, or what size card you want, and they'll give you templates for that size and for that that effort. So that's a good one to plug. I am going to just mention one more thing. The recycling partnership just launched. And I will try to provide the link in the comments as well, but I know that they just released, because we were talking about drop-offs, a drop-off recycling rural community engagement fight contamination toolkit. So I don't know a lot about it because I'm not a staff member and I haven't used it yet. But if you go to their website and go to their resources, there's several toolkits, do-it-yourself signs, greenhouse gas calculators, multifamily toolkit, campaign builders. And I know the most recent one, which I didn't find offhand, but it was they're really extending to drop-off recycling sites. And so tips and tricks on ways to host your drop-off recycling sites as well. So I wanted to plug that here. I have one last question I prepared. When educating the public or in the classroom, what do you find to be the most important message to convey? And as an example, the most frequent question I receive, Jennifer mentioned we do a few public events. And so that's when we really get kind of some of those questions is, do my recyclables actually get recycled? That's this year. I've only been at a few booths, but people really have that question. Like they've seen the news, they think recycling is broken. They think that all of our recycling is going to the landfill. And that's obviously not a new question, but I feel like I've gotten it a lot more recently than 10 years ago or what. I mean, I have gotten it 10 years ago too. So I try to gear like my messaging around that we have strong infrastructure for both on the collection and manufacturing side of recyclable materials here in Indiana. And of course, that's what ITEM is trying to really push and help support and provide technical assistance by. Now that message might be different for a city or a county, but I think that there might be one overall message that we like to convey to our residents. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would second that, Deanna. You know, for me as a person that grew up in a different state and is now an Indiana transplant, one of the most amazing pieces, I think, of the culture in this state is how tight-knit and, you know, Indiana, people love Indiana. And I think really tapping into that and showing how, you know, recycling incorrectly hurts people in India, you know, hurts the businesses that now have to deal with that extra cost, hurts the people, how, you know, how businesses are using this material in Indiana, and really that kind of homegrown, it helps us all to do this, you know, and this is how specifically it helps us in Indiana, has been a really powerful message. And that's what we've seen a lot of response to, because a lot of folks just don't realize what the infrastructure we do have here is. That there's this, you know, it goes in the bin and it magically disappears and, you know, whatever, but taking that and helping them understand where it's going, and that it, you know, a lot of it's not going to the landfill, right? If you're recycling something that's highly recyclable, it is getting recycled. And just making that point clear, how it impacts you, it impacts me and everybody else in Indiana. And that seems to have been really helpful for us, I think, in driving our engagement pieces.
I'll say too, to repeat that message of where it goes, I like Lynn's facility tours where people could actually see where their recycling is going on those. I think that's a neat opportunity. I know not every community or city are able to kind of be able to do something like that, but that's a neat, because people really think, you know, that whole throw it away, like even if it's going in your curbside recycling bin, they don't know where it goes after that. They think it's gone. So.
And one point I'll make to folks that argue that all of our recycling is just being thrown away is, I will say, you know, the biggest recycler in Hendricks County is Raised Trash. I will say Raised Trash would not have invested millions of dollars into the MRF on the west side of Indianapolis if they were just going to throw it all away. And that it's a different kind of economic argument for recycling, but that seems to resonate with people. Oh yeah, well, I guess that does make sense.
I always like to tell people how systems work. Even if they hear different things, once they know how something works, whether we're talking about recycling or water or landfills, if they understand the basic science and concepts to how things function, you can't take that away from them. Even if they hear like my recyclings aren't recyclable or if it gets thrown in the trash, but they're like, well, this is how it works. So when they know how it works, I always like to get that in somehow, how things work. Can't take it away.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Okay, is there any additional questions? This is a chance for all of you on the call to also ask your questions from our presenters today. Jennifer has plugged in our evaluation link again. You know, please let me know what you thought of today's session, what you want to see in future sessions, sign up to be part of our steering committee. All those things are very helpful. Any last words from our presenters or messages? I really appreciate you guys coming on today, talking about education and outreach efforts. Hopefully we all come away with a few new nuggets, tools of the trade to kind of use in our own programming. I'll just open it up real quick if you have any last things you want to share. Everybody go home and recycle, right? And recycle right.
Exactly.
With that, we're actually going to end our session today a little bit early. So appreciate you being here today and participating. Please fill out the evaluation form. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.